Google Chrome gets kind of tricky. All right, so we are on air live. So this is being recorded from this point forward, so we can share our wisdom with the masses, or rather, Martina and Carrie and everyone but me can. I'm just here to ask questions because I don't know anything. So anyone, shall we go around and everybody just introduce themselves and like what they know about TCI? First of all, TCI is totally comprehensible input.
Teaching with comprehensible.
Teaching with comprehensible input. Okay. So we are on air live. From this point forward, so we can share our wisdom with the masses, or rather, Martina and Carrie and everyone but me can. I'm just here to ask questions because I don't know anything. All right, is someone playing the video?
I think.
So we go around and everybody
maybe the baby.
Like what they know about. Yeah, first of all, TCI is totally comprehensible input. I have a little flashback here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll introduce me. I'm Carrie, and I'm from Southern Illinois, and I've been teaching with TPRS and TCI for 7 years, and I think TCI really, to me, is incorporating the tenets of TPRS where you try to keep things comprehensible and still incorporating culture in the lesson.
I think if you guys have headphones, I think that might work better in case we get stuck in that. So how long did you say, Carrie?
7 years.
7 years, okay. So it's finally getting to the stage where you feel like you know what you're doing?
Finally, yes. It takes a long time because you always feel like maybe you could have done something better or something different. But I think that's part of what makes you grow, too.
Right.
To continue to feel that way.
I feel like it was 7 years before I felt like I had any clue going on as a teacher at all. So
exactly.
So, all right. Martina, would you like to introduce yourself and our guest?
Yeah, I'm Martina Bex. This is my son Leland, and I taught with TPRS for 4 years. I'm not teaching right now. I'm home with my kids. But I started out just doing TPRS and then made the transition, I guess, to TCI. TPRS is really just one form of comprehensible input, just the story asking. And then, the TCI, there's a whole myriad of strategies that you can use, but the idea is that students are acquiring language through input, and they still do output activities, but that the language acquisition is happening through input received in different ways. So.
Not that forced output. I like that, what you said. They do still output. It's just an output that they are ready for. They're entitled and welcomed and asked to produce, but only in real, comfortable situations for them.
So like novices would be a parroting kind of thing, or they would be.
They actually can create some with language. When you're really doing some story asking, novices are pretty talented at recombining. They always start out with new structures where they kind of parrot back and they answer with yes and no and short one-word answers. But they do begin quickly, especially your superstar kids will begin really quickly to start to create with the language.
And that usually comes through the story asking, you said?
For me, it does in those early days. I do a lot more story asking in level 1 than I do in the upper levels. In the upper levels, we're TCI geared, so our story asking might really more be cultural background asking. We are looking at artifacts and talking about the culture and how it relates to our kids where they are.
Output does happen, but just as they are comfortable with it.
Yes.
And there is creation with the language even at the novice level.
Absolutely.
My notes are trying to catch up with me.
I think I was just at IFLT, and in Carol Gobb's session, she was talking about how, one of our, well, even in story asking, but one of the big TCI strategies is PQA, or personalized questions and answers, where a teacher would ask a question to the class that includes one of the target structures, something that you're trying to learn. So, you know, if you're trying to learn wants to go, then you might say, who or where do you want to go? And so students are offering up answers immediately in the target language with that structure, but then the teacher is guiding the discussion, and so the majority of what they're hearing is coming from the teacher as the teacher circles their answers and reflects them to their classmates. But they are having opportunities for output to add details and clarify and all of those things.
So, like, what they're doing is they're giving back something that's already they've been exposed to through other input.
Yes, a lot of times.
Or even like if you've just introduced the structure to students, you might have it on the board, and like you usually say to write it in 2 colors, like write the target language structure in black and the English in blue. And so you would have, you know, do you want to go in Spanish, and then, or whatever the target language is, and then the translation in English. And then you might also write the other forms of it, like I want to go. And so you can ask the question to students, and then those superstar students that are totally ready for it are going to be excited to jump in and say, oh, I want to go. And the other kids will just kind of repeat and say, you want to go, and you know, guide them through that.
Could you tell me more about the setup of those cards? Like, you sit like with one color on one side, or?
Carrie, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. We at my school we just go directly onto the whiteboard, and I just keep 2 different colored all the times in the chalk tray. I'll keep 2 different colored markers, and so whatever our structures are, I'll already have them on the board in Spanish in one color and in English in the other. And then as we go through the day, if other things pop up that the kids want to know, they can keep a self-curated vocabulary list where they can add all the new things that really interest them. But I also put them on the board in Spanish and English in the same colors, just so that in their mind they're getting that differentiation. This is the Spanish and this is the English of the word.
So you do it more with translation than with like arrays or with image connections?
At the beginning I do, because it's been surprising with a lot, when I have a lot of maybe slower processors in class, it's amazing how many times they mistake what I thought, like when I've done gestures and stuff, things that they think that the gesture means that it doesn't. So it's a nice fast way. And then I take that translation away after they're comfortable with it. I don't have to put that translation up anymore, but it kind of lets me know that the playing field's even. Everybody in the class knows exactly what we're talking about.
But you take it away, but they might still have it on their cards, right?
They could have it on their vocabulary list, yeah.
Oh, on their list. Do you find that they become dependent on that? Like I feel like some of the students I've had would just like have that list with the English in front of them and constantly be going English to Spanish, English to Spanish.
I feel like when you start to do story asking, you're getting so many repetitions of the structures that they get to feel very comfortable with them, and they don't rely on it quite as much. When I had a really long, like the textbook vocabulary list, a lot of times had 55 or 60 words, and so they were overwhelmed by the quantity that they were dealing with. But we're really working maybe 3 structures for a class period, and so it helps them have a manageable amount, and they really can get comfortable with those. And there may be several other words that pop up that I write on the board, and those are kind of bonus structures. Your fastest ones pick those up right away. And some of my special ed kids this year were really, they'd always write those down because they wanted to impress me with their impress me vocabulary. But I think they just gain confidence by limiting what's required of them and opening the rest of it to being, like bonus for the fastest processors.
So impress me vocabulary, is that like an actual strategy that you have them focus on, like where they can pull in their own vocabulary or something?
Yeah, that they have a structure, like 3 structures that I feel like we're responsible for the day. But then if we add new things, we can everybody can decide if that's important to them or not.
I think, I don't know, did Carol came up with that, the 3 vocab areas on the board, Carrie?
Maybe Blaine.
Or Blaine, okay.
Yeah,
So someone along the line came up with it. There's a lot of teachers that use TCI, they divide their board into 3 areas. For me, I have my target structures at the top, and those are the structures that the students absolutely have to know, and those are the ones that I'm really focusing on throughout the class period. And then they have another area that's like good to know vocabulary, and that might be different forms of the target structures or other vocab that's I don't know, not even
related things.
Yeah, related stuff. And then the impress me is like something that might come up that you're like, okay, if my students don't ever learn this or in the near future, that's totally fine, but I'll throw this up there. You know, there will be kids that'll be really excited to pick those up, like idiomatic expressions or super specialized vocabulary that they really have no need for, but it happened to pop up in the conversation.
So impress me is the 3rd category on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I'm trying to see. I have a picture somewhere that I'm looking for. So
that reminds me of I was reading the Keys to Assessing Language or Performance, something like that, Paul Sandrock book, and it talks about you have to decide which vocabulary they have to have readily available, and then which could be more individual. So the impress me would be like the individual that they can pick up or not pick up.
Exactly. And we did a project in level 4, but it applies to all levels. We had talked about, it was Kara Jacobs' narco-violence unit that she designed, and the kids, the struggling learners really had down the vocabulary that I thought was key to studying the unit, but then those super performers were able to take little words that just popped up in conversation, like financial related words, and they were able to talk about the economy of Mexico, and so I think the kids can take it where they want to then when they get into that impress me stuff. But even my weakest performers really were concrete on the basics of talking about narco violence. So
okay. Let's see. Sorry, I'm messing with controls here, and I don't know what I'm doing. All right. You mentioned that TPRS was story asking. Are the 2 synonymous?
Well, TPRS is teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling. So the story asking is definitely a big chunk of how they acquire the vocabulary, but through reading, a lot of what TPRS is based on are Dr. Krash's theories that, reading is just a fundamental way to grow, whether in English or in your second language. Our kids acquire a whole lot more vocabulary than we think through their reading, and so whether it's that we're trying to scaffold them up to read an authentic resource or whether they're reading readings that are designed for learners for pleasure, the more we can get them reading, the better. So I think it's kind of a combination of that story/reading.
Did anybody else have any questions that you guys wanted to ask? Because I've been kind of hogging the questions.
How would you start the year if somebody who wants to do this new? I haven't done it before. How would I start the year with it?
Martina, do you want to do yours? I'm getting ready.
I'll put the link in that I do. I think most teachers start out the year with TPR and an activity from Ben Slavic called Circling with Balls that has to do with like a personal inventory. And Carrie, I'll let you explain that, but I'll put in the link that I do. I just start. My lesson plans are based off of a unit, like a 2-week unit that Carol Gobb wrote and shared on her website years ago. And
there and free.
What did you say?
It's there and free, so.
Yeah, it's there for free. So I've got the link to that. I'll put that in there. But we start doing a little just vignettes from the first day, so introducing words. I'm talking about level 1 anyway. Introducing words like boy, girl, says, just those super high frequency vocab, and just doing a little story vignette with that. But I'll put the links in there.
I do the circling with balls, and if you Google circling with balls Ben Slavic, you'll find I'll put him over here in this little text box too, so you know how to spell his name. Ben circling with balls, he has every student do a personal inventory, so you get a little bit of background information about the kids, but also he makes little name tents for them to put on their desks, and then he has them draw their favorite activity, and he calls it circling with balls because so many kids choose to talk about a sport that they like. But then I spend the first 2 weeks talking about each and every student, and we just go around and compare and gradually build more and more language. So if Laura's the first student and she's put that she likes to listen to music, then I'm going to be circling that structure. Oh, class, this is Laura. Laura's a girl. You know, get the boy and girl. There is a girl. There's a boy. And Laura likes to listen to music, and then we might try to guess, you know, what kinds of music is a great one because there's a lot of cognates. Does she like rock music, or does she like classical music? And what bands does she like? And so sometimes it might be silly, or sometimes it might be serious. And does Laura play music, or does Laura listen to music? And if I go really slow and only do 2 or 3 students a day, it can take through the first 2 weeks, and then you really get to know all of the kids in the classroom well quickly, and all target language.
This sounds like something at Axel that I saw last year. It was the organic world language. Like, we were in circles, and we'd be like, the ¿tienes tatuaje? No, no tengo tatuaje. Ella tiene tatuaje? Sí, tiene tatuaje. ¿Te gusta tatuaje? And, like, we just, like, went around the circle, and, like, we'd focus on one thing and, like, use some of the main structures. Is that the same thing, or is it slightly different?
It's similar. I think I went to one of their presentations at ACTFul last year also. It might have been the same one. I don't know.
I think I went because you were there.
Oh.
And I couldn't find it.
But there are a lot. The main similarity is the repetition. That, you know, they're trying to say target structures again and again, and so are we. But what I've found is that they don't usually do translation, at least in the session I was in, and so there's a lot of the time that's spent at the beginning of the activity, or in my case, through the whole activity, trying to figure out what exactly they're talking about. I was in a German one, and I had no idea what was going on. I think most of the other people did, so apparently I'm not that good at learning languages. I'll just stick to Spanish, I guess. But yeah, they do the repetition, and they do a lot of the TPR, like the physical movement and things. So there's a lot of things they have in common.
And that's what I didn't say that, but I do put everything up on the board. So if Laura listens to music, I'm going to put escucha música, she listens to music, or he listens to music on the board. And at least for the first couple of days that we're talking about it, I'm going to pause and point and make sure that everybody's with me. And when they stop needing to look, then I know I'm ready to, you know, not put that one up and put other things up.
Are the kids writing that stuff down?
No, I don't have my kids write it down.
Sometimes at the beginning, like if I'm going to have, well, actually usually at the beginning of a unit, if I'm saying, okay, these are our 3 target structures for the unit, and I've got it planned out, then I'll have students write them down at the beginning just so that they have a record for their parents and stuff. But we never use it in class, honestly. It's just so that they can go back and reference, like, when it comes time for big exams and say, okay, I know that the exam is going to be based on these terms. I have to know these. But any vocab that comes up during the day, my students don't have notes in front of them that they're taking down. And occasionally there will be kids that will be scribbling stuff down right at the end of the period before they leave. But we don't want the focus to be on the notebook. We want it to be on what's on the conversation that's happening. So.
Do you only have a few language structures per unit, and how long do the units usually last?
So I think I'm a little bit different than a lot of teachers because I really am super structured with it. So I have like 3 structures per unit, and each unit is like a week long. And other things will come up too, but there will be 3 high-frequency vocab. I think most teachers are more along the lines of like Ben Slavik, who is a master, and they just kind of wing it, like based on what students want to talk about, what comes up as they're talking about normal parts of their life. Because the idea is that if you're trying to teach high-frequency structures, those structures are going to come up naturally, you know, whether the teacher plans for them or not. I mean, they are high-frequency by definition, so no matter what you're talking about, you're going to be bringing in those structures. But I think I'm too controlling. So
no, I'm like Martina. I have to know ahead of time what. I mean, there are a lot of things that the students control, that extra stuff that comes into the unit, but I do have targeted structures, and probably, like, I bet I do more like 6 per week. Do 3 structures and then have a couple days with them, and then do 3 more structures. And that structure might be wants to eat. So during that 2-day period that we're working with wants to eat, we could say wants to dance and wants to run, because we would have, those are easy to gesture, and so we would have kind of done brain breaks where they get up and do a little bit of TPR gesturing or acting it out, and so I can then recombine, and that's where they start to create with language. They've heard you say eats, you know, a cake, and then they say wants to eat a cake, and so that wasn't necessarily our structure, but they're kind of putting it together with other things. Any other questions?
Can I ask a question about, I'm Amanda, by the way. I teach in Wisconsin. I don't teach Spanish 1. I teach 2 and 3, and this is, I've little by little have done things, incorporated things, but this year is kind of my full-out year of kind of going full-blown with trying to do performance-based. But where do you start then with a 2 or 3 level if kids already have some type of basis, I guess? And a lot of the teachers in my school are more traditional teachers. They don't, they're very, where's the book? I need the book. We need to get as much as we can, and so where do we begin with that if they're, you know, we're getting kids from that kind of structure into now this kind of more let's work on the language rather than knowing about the language.
I'm in the from Cynthia Hitz that has a ton of first day of school ideas that can be used in all different levels.
Okay.
I usually just do some kind of a discussion activity. So you could do the circling with balls again. I mean, because the kids will probably be with a whole new group of students.
Right.
But I didn't teach a whole lot of upper levels. Carrie, you could probably field that question better.
And if they've been, I think it's a hard position that you're in, because if they've been textbook trained, they've learned that they can come to class and kind of shut down a little bit. You know, the textbook is going to provide everything for them, and with a performance-based classroom, they have to step up and, you know, be involved in listening to the discussions and participating in them. So I think maybe like what Martina said, something that's getting to know them, like almost introducing them like you would a level 1, so that they get the feel for what it's like in a simple scenario. I'm going to do, I think this year I don't teach level 2, level 3 and 4, I think we're going to do like the best vacation ever, and we're going to have a competition to try and tell stories about our summer vacation that will outdo each other. And then I'm going to use
True
that
stories
as our,
only, of course, right?
No, I'm going to encourage them to embellish as much as possible. But I thought we could use that as a review, just like pop-up grammar for past tense, because now they're moving into 3, 4, and we really want to By the time they graduate with Spanish 4, ACTFL wants to see them doing 3 times, present, past, and future.
Mm-hmm.
If they can do that, they score advanced low, which our teacher candidates aren't coming out of college able to do all the time. So I want to review those structures so that they can score high on those placement tests.
Okay.
I had a question about tests. You said something about quizzes or tests. How is it that you go about assessing them? Because I haven't used quizzes or tests in years, and I'm hesitant to go back.
No, I don't use a typical quiz or test. I assess a lot with writing or with speaking, pop-ups, little projects that I have them complete. Not the typical fill in the. Are you hiding in the bathroom, Martina?
No, my sister just got here, so now I'll just leave the kids with her and my friend. And
I thought you ran away to the bathroom.
no, to a back room, but not the bathroom.
I don't give like a traditional vocabulary quiz or test. Everything is performance-based.
So what do tests look like in that situation?
So a level 1, at the beginning of the year, we do the 2 weeks of getting to know you with the circling with balls, and then I don't test them on that. That's all just really getting to know you time. And so I might do an exit ticket or 2 during the week, like write down something you know about a classmate, or tell me about 5 people in the class, just to get them, a couple of grades in the grade book, because parents are always checking the online grades. But then the next week, I do about a 2-week lesson from Carol Gobb's Quantum A Moss book, and then we would take a test on that, and it would be our goal in that unit is to tell the story of the boy who cried wolf. And so to be able to tell the story to a partner would be part of the test, and to be able to write the story would be part of the test, and to look at pictures and read sentences and decide which sentences best describe the pictures would be part of the test. And so really trying to hit the 4 skills in the one test.
I just put it in your semester 2 choice board in there.
Oh yeah, and for exam time by the second semester they're really good, and so they can turn into a choice board.
I had a question. Sorry. I had a question for you guys about when students want to write down or know how to spell everything that you say as they're learning new words. Do you guys kind of try to discourage that? Or, because I feel like it kind of interrupts the flow of the lesson when you're trying to repeat and bring things around another time. But students a lot of times, like, they want to have that to look back on. Do you let students do that? Do you give them the words, or do you just focus on the speaking and the listening?
I guess in my case, I don't get a lot of that. I think that if your students, I was the only language teacher my students had ever had. I had them through 3 levels before they went on to another school. So I think that probably comes more if you have the experience, well, either with the same teacher in previous years or with a different teacher. But I never had that problem with students wanting to know how to spell it or how exactly to pronounce something that's written.
So I find even with my level 1s, like when we're learning how to ask, like, oh, we're practicing, like, oh, what's your name? Oh, her name is this. What's her name? And they always want to know, well, how do I spell that? How do I write that down? And I feel like it interrupts the flow.
Yeah.
Maybe if you had a set policy, like at the end of class, we'll have the last 2 minutes free, and you can copy down, like if you put it up on the board where they can see it, that might let them feel comfortable knowing what it looks like, and then they could have just a couple minutes before the bell where they could copy it down, and for the ones that really wanted to know, then they would have it easy and quick that way. Tina's got a bunch of stuff going in the little box over there. Don't forget to link to your blog, Martina Bex. You have the best blog of anybody.
There you go. And I'm trying to put all these links on the LangCamp Digo list, so if you want to find them later, because that little group chat thing is sneaky and it disappears when the chat's over.
Ah. So what are you putting it on?
She has a
the
Digo.
group Digo list for the LangCamp. I'll link to that while we're linking. If I can find it without losing anything else.
I wish I could find that picture of my board.
Yeah.
We've always got the community up. I had a PDF of something that it wouldn't let me screen share last night when we were talking about student choice, and so I had to like snap a picture of my computer and like send that via the community. So if you need to do that later, always a possibility.
Pop it in there.
What on earth? Nope, I gave you the wrong link for the Digo. Absolutely obvious. I did have one question. I was thinking of trying one unit with at least the story asking, like kind of focusing on that strategy. Would that be a logical thing to do, or is TCI really more of a package that requires more strategies, more specific strategies at the same time?
I think the best way to start, picking one strategy to start with, I think is the best thing to do, because if you're trying to do a unit and do all of them, it is really overwhelming. And I started out with story asking when I first got started. I think a lot of people start out with the personalized questions and answers because it's not as structured. You can break away from it at any point if you're like, okay, this is bombing and I'm about to have a breakdown. Whereas the story asking, it's a little bit harder to just pull yourself away from it if you start feeling shaky. But that is how I got into it. I would say just pick a really simple script. Maybe do something pre-made for your first one. That someone else has done. I got most of my first scripts off of Ben Slavic's blog. I think a lot of them were Ann Matava scripts. And I can put a link to her book. And just try it out. And if you have some time to do some YouTube video searches for TPRS and watch a couple people give demos, that would be helpful if you've not had a chance to go anywhere. I had watched NTPRS DVDs from a conference the weekend before I jumped into it. So that was really helpful to see, oh, this is what it's supposed to look like. And I think mine didn't really look anything like that, but
I've kind of half-heartedly, shall we say, tried it before. Like I tried to rip off Sarah Elizabeth Cottrell one time with penguins and aliens and all that, and the kids were like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
I think that's an important part of changing your methodology, is that you don't forget to stay true to, like, I tried to do penguins and aliens and stuff like Blaine Ray can pull off all this stuff, but I just can't. And so it has worked out a lot better for me to be less silly. I mean, we still do silly things. It may be about the kids. Last year, I know one time one of my groups, we were talking about a factory, and the factory made evil bras and clones of the classroom superhero, and they came up with all of that stuff, but it was not to, it wasn't me trying to force silly on them. It was them kind of taking the lead. I shared over here at the side, I don't know if everybody can see it or if you can post it up. If you're thinking about, taking what you have in your text and adapting to a storytelling unit, I made an Evernote document with the graphic that goes along with understanding by design. It talks about, how do you pick out what vocabulary? Because on a textbook list, you're going to have 50 or 60 words, and it's so much. So you look at your, it's like 3 concentric circles, if you click on the little document and open it up. And then also there's a big chuck it bucket next to it. So go first through your list. What words on this list are completely unnecessary? Like, what could my kids, if we're really talking about having a limited amount of space in their brain to acquire language, what are the throwaways? And so I always kind of joke about classroom supplies, like a stapler. If they don't learn how to say stapler, they probably won't come across that when they're traveling. But there are some words like while and even though, and those things are always in like that little footnote box at the bottom of the textbook page, and they're really more important when you're reading. You see those all the time, and you're never going to see stapler. So kind of group your vocabulary with this little worksheet so that you know when you're going in. These are going to be the structures that I'm focusing on hardcore, and these are kind of my a little bit more structures, and these are my impress me's, and then this is stuff that I'm just getting rid of.
I'm having trouble opening the Evernote link.
Sorry, that's me.
It says vocabulary, but it's not actually.
Hold on, maybe it's not done syncing.
And I have swap determined where you actually go up north, find something to do.
Is it shared, or is that how Evernote even works?
I shared it, but I think maybe it wasn't synced yet. Will you try it again? Click on it again and see if it pops up this time. Well, no, it still didn't pop up, even on mine.
Huh. Mine's also trying to get me to sign in, and I can't remember my password. Okay. Are there any other strategies like story asking and the PQA that you would recommend for possible starting points, or for when we're feeling more confident?
I think lesson plans that are strategies that could come in later on. Movie talk is a big one right now, and that's basically you're showing a short movie clip to your class and pausing it at strategic points, and you're just describing what's on the screen. And so it's comprehensible because everything that you're saying they can see, and you don't have the translations right now. So some people like that because they still are leery of having written translations. But there is room for misinterpretation. Like if you point at a flower, well, kids don't really know if you're saying flower or dandelion. But movie talk, and then embedded reading is another one. And that is obviously a reading-based strategy. I put the link in the sidebar, and that is core to AI. Lori Clark and Michelle Whaley developed it, and it's just layered readings. So in your in the first reading that students would do, it's super basic. Almost a summary of the story, and then they read the same story with more details added in, and then they keep going for as many levels as you want. So it's a really good way to even do like AP texts that students are going to have to be working with eventually. You can kind of dumb them down a little bit first, get students really comfortable with the base level reading, do activities based on that discussion, and then introduce some new vocab and work that vocab into the second level reading, and so on and so forth. And there's a ton of examples on that website. Teachers just email them into Lori, and Lori posts them on the site.
A couple of people trying to join in, I think, and I'm trying to get them in.
I have a question about kind of the storytelling aspect of it. Do you think that CI could work without the storytelling part of it? I mean, if you're, for instance, if teachers are not the type that kind of are going to do that storytelling where they're kind of creating stories as you go, or could it be done? I mean, do you think that kids could have that same learn just as much with other types of comprehensible input rather than just the storytelling?
I've found that, like, even using pictures, a lot of times, especially if it is very clear what you're illustrating, and you can circle around a lot, and students pick up things really easily. Like this past year, I illustrated from different families, and then as we went along, they started to pick up more and more of the relationships, and I could ask, is this the mother, is this the father, and they could pick that up. So I think that would be a good starting point if you're not ready to do stories. It's just familiar pictures. I think that pictures can offer a lot of support and help them to make connections and figure out new vocab.
I mean, do the stories differ between the classes? I mean, or are they pretty much the same as for every single class? Because
you can guide them to be the same.
Okay.
If you want to keep them where you have, pretty much the same thing happening every hour.
Okay.
Different details, but same events. You mean, Carrie?
Yes.
Okay. So like names and possibly places might be a little bit different, but
exactly.
And then just how do you keep track of that? I mean, do you just write it down per class?
Have a student write it down.
Okay.
You'll forget it.
Because that was my thing. Because this past year I taught an overload, and so I had out of the 8 hours I taught 7 or 6 of them, and so it was just a lot of classes to meet, 3 different preps, and so just having to keep track of all that.
If you have an iPad, I have just one iPad, and I can give it to a kid and have them draw pictures of what's happening in the story, and then it reminds me what happened in each class, and I can go back and record over it, and then you have a review for the next day. But they wouldn't even have to have an iPad. You could make just a little piece of paper with 6 squares and have them write down.
Okay.
Yeah, but you definitely don't need to do story asking. I think a lot of teachers do it in the lower levels, but like Carrie was saying earlier, especially in the upper levels, you really get away from that. But it's not even necessary in low levels. I mean, there's so many other things you can do with just discussion and movie talk and reading activities that you don't need to do it if it's not something that's working for you or your kids. I had one group of students I taught 3 different sections of the same course, and one section I had them right after lunch, and they were insane, and classroom management is not my strong point, and so I was like, I just can't even deal with like the shouting out of suggestions. I mean, they were so wild, so I just stuck to reading mostly in that class, and we did almost all reading-based strategies and a little bit of discussion, but it was all very story asking is too much fun for them.
Have you encountered native speakers of the language, and how does that work with this? Because a lot of times it works with kids who maybe don't have that background, but then other kids kind of just sit there and say, like, I already know this. Or
I think that for me, I don't let them put native speakers into level 1 or 2, because for them, that's all, level 1 and 2, they don't need that. But the culture that we get into in level 3 and 4, my natives haven't ever heard about it. I have maybe 7 kids last year that were in level 3 and 4, and they were all of Mexican background, and so they didn't know anything about El Salvador's Civil War, about Spain's Civil War, about even really about, like, we read Calaca Alegre, real heavy Chicano identity theme, and they hadn't really thought about it that way either. And so I think that focus on using the language in a cultural setting rather than, we're going to learn about the grammar of the language or memorize a bunch of vocabulary lists, they're really learning something new. You're kind of teaching content while teaching language.
Okay. Because our school is a little weird. This past year I taught in Spanish for Spanish speakers course, which was the first time it was taught at our school, and how they wanted us to structure it was Spanish 1 and Spanish 2 all in 1 year, which I guess my coordinator doesn't know this, but I didn't do it because I couldn't justify teaching a person who could possibly speak Spanish better than I do, although I am Hispanic. teaching them the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. And so what I found what worked with them, we did the like Vida y Muerte and La Meta Salvatrucha, and they loved it. And so I took it that way. But we do have kids in 1 and 2, and I try to get them out and up, but sometimes it doesn't work, and then you still get those kids in those
That makes that hard.
Yeah.
If they even could put them in level 2, where you would again be, novels. My natives had never read novels before, so even the level 1 and 2 novels were new reading for them because they make all those native spelling errors, like Abia is ABIA, and so they were learning while we read the books. But I think that they go straight into level 1 because that's just not a place for a native or heritage speaker.
Right.
So did they participate in the like the story asking type activities with like the very basic vocabulary and stuff like that, or did they kind of sit back and just kind of absorb cultural thingies?
Was this to me, or
Carrie with the native speakers who were learning along?
They participate. We do less story asking, a lot more situational discussions, kind of recycling the vocabulary through really asking a lot of questions about stories that we've read or articles that we've looked at, or we'll watch a video clip and go back and ask a bunch of questions using those recycled words. So they totally participated in that because they were interested in, I think it's a great asset of being not tied to a textbook anymore, so that I can kind of follow what the students are interested in, and it keeps that engagement whether they're native speaker or not. It's just a lot more interesting, I think, to study the El Salvador and the gangs than it is to study my household chores.
how do you, because I want to try novels or more of a reading aspect, and our district is very much still with the Realidades series, although I not once opened the textbook this year with my kids. I didn't assign them or anything.
I see a lot of smiles down there at the bottom. When you said Realidades, I think that more than one of us has been there before.
And so, I mean, I'm trying to follow the same themes kind of in there, but rather not taking like the exactly full, like exactly what chapter it is, but I'm exactly, I just read that exactly.
That's great, Karen.
And I've been working with, I'm sure, I know a lot of you guys have worked with her or talked with her, is Natalia Delattre, French. And so I've been working, she lives kind of close, she lives in the same town, so we've been meeting up lately and talking, but she's kind of helped me rework more of a reasonable order of things and trying to talk through structures and everything. But novels I would like to do, but how do you incorporate that with having to still follow a curriculum in the sense, or follow this idea, because teachers before and after are going to be still using the book.
Expecting,
You rip off Martina. That's what it looks like.
What do you think, Martina?
Martina, did you do a crosswalk kind of thing with TPRS and Realidades?
Did I what?
I did when I first started. I was kind of trying to blend the textbook with TPRS. It's hard because there's so much vocabulary in there. When you get your chuck-it bucket, it ends up so full because there's so much stuff in there. I think, maybe just pick like take one chapter that they're going to be doing in their text, the chapter before, hit on what you think the terms from that chapter that they just can't live without are, and then stick a novel in place of that chapter. Okay. Don't tell anybody.
Well, nobody really checks. There's not somebody micromanaging, which is kind of nice because we're supposed to have common final assessments, and I haven't done that either, and I'm trying to just going with my gut a little bit, but I know when we do talk about things as a department, have been referred to as the song and dance. You know, you do a song and dance in your classroom, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, because I don't use the book and I don't kind of follow along with.
But if you direct them to the ACTFL standards, I'm gonna just go get that right now. I'll put it. You just keep taking them right back there because that's our
our
guiding point.
Well, we did get started a little bit late, but it is officially ending time. Any last minute thoughts or questions?
This was fun, guys. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Cool. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm excited we figured it out.
Yeah, we are creatures of the 21st century now.
That's the truth.
Well, you are anyway. You're dragging the rest of us.
Yes, drag with me. All right, so I gotta go read some bedtime stories. But if you guys want to hang out, I'm gonna stop the broadcast. I think you guys can still talk to each other if you have some more questions or anything. But,
I gotta drive home. I'm at my mom's house. I was at a meeting and I didn't make it all the way home, so I was like, "Mom, let me in." I gotta go.
Oh my gosh. All right. That's commitment. We appreciate that.
No, we had a good dinner, so it's all good.
Very nice. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, once again.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 Bye.